Hello, and welcome to um, my Anime Geek segment. I am a huge fan of anime, and I have been ever since I was a kid, since long before I even knew what anime was. Unfortunately, as a kid growing up back in back in the early sort of 2000s, anime in South Africa wasn't very well known. Um, it was and still is in large part a very niche market. Um, and as such, the shows I got to see were very limited. um, Still, there were some shows that snuck in. Um, Quite a lot, actually, now that I think about it. Um, so, I figured, being that I'm a huge anime fan, and I'm actually kind of curious because I don't know how many people have actually seen these animes that I'm talking about. So, um, I thought I would do a top 5 anime um, that I grew up with video. Um, and these are primarily shows that just sort of snuck in and made their way onto Saturday morning television doing big time marathons. Now, just to be clear, this video is about anime series, not anime movies. I will do an anime movies list some way down the line. I'm not sure when. But I'm only doing series on this list because I believe movies deserve a separate list. So with that said, let's get started.
Number 5, Dragon Ball Z.
I don't know anyone, literally anyone, who didn't want to be a Super Saiyan and shoot energy beams out of their hands and do those sorts of things when they were kids. The show ran for 291 episodes or so, and it's just packed with very fluid action scenes. The character development, being that the show has so many episodes, is very impressive. You get a lot of time to actually get to know the characters. Unfortunately, the big problem with this is, I mean, the story is impressive as well, but with having so many episodes, you have to pad the runtime somewhat, and Dragon Ball Z does that extremely often. There's just more filler episode than anything else. There are so many filler episodes that it actually has become something of the whole joke about how many Super Saiyans does it take to screw in a light bulb. And of course, the answer to the thing is, okay, just one, but it takes 4 episodes and Krillin dies. So, yes, it's a good show. Highly recommend it, but you really do have to have a lot of patience with it.
Number 4, Cyborg 009, The Cyborg Soldier.
This one is harder for me to describe because I can't remember it very well. The story is basically 9 people who have been kidnapped at various times in history, and they've been modified, turned into cyborgs by this Black Ghost organization. The show came around when I was I must have been about 8 or 9 years old, so it would be about 2001, 2002-ish. The animation is, of course, really dated, I have to say, compared to some of the stuff we've got now, it is beyond ridiculously dated. Lots of big eyes and freaky hairstyles and that sort of stuff. I can't really say much about the storyline itself, other than it's 9 people augmented by and end up fighting against the guys that turned them into cyborgs. It's a lot darker than a lot of the cartoons that were on at the time. We used to sit here in front of the TV. We'd rush home from wherever we'd been, and then we'd have to sit through an hour of Dexter's Lab or Johnny Bravo, and we did it because it was one of the better cartoons out there. Just so we could wait for this Cyborg 009 to come on. So yeah, it's a lot edgier than what was on at the time, and the action scenes, in spite of how dated it is, the action scenes are so fluid that as a kid, it blew my mind. So yeah, that's why it's at number 4 on the list.
Number 3, Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters and Yu-Gi-Oh! GX.
The number 3 spot on this list is actually taken by 2 shows from the same franchise. Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters showed up in, I believe it was 2004 when it came on the first time around, and I actually quite liked it. I loved it. The premise is pretty simple. I think everybody kind of knows it. The sort of weak, wimpy protagonist ends up becoming a vessel, for lack of a better word, for an ancient Egyptian pharaoh's spirit when he completes this special puzzle, and has to then spend the rest of the series fighting evil by playing cards. Okay. It sounds dumb, and yeah, it is. But as dumb and as campy as it is, and as frustrating as all the friendship speeches were, the storylines were well thought out, with each season getting its own story arc. Again, like as with Dragon Ball Z, you've got the same problem of it takes them several episodes to do one segment. So there is a lot of filler in it to a point, but the characters were all likable, so GX came out a little while later, and I didn't watch a whole lot of GX until recently. But it was pretty much more of the same, just following new characters in a new setting. But again, they're also fighting evil by playing cards. Both series featured seriously top-notch animation. The creature designs, or the designs on the playing cards, were just beautiful to look at, and that was the real draw to the show, was the artwork on the cards. And I actually still have mine. These old Yu-Gi-Oh cards of mine. I've had these for years now, so I still play occasionally when I can find the time and someone who actually, shares my interest. The one problem that GX solved in my mind, that Duel Monsters didn't was there's very little filler in terms of GX. There was a lot of potential for it, but because Duel Monsters only ran for 224 episodes, and GX ran for 180 episodes. Now both series have a lot of filler episodes, but it's usually 1 or 2 per season, and not, one character going to one place for 6 episodes. That's not present at all. So that's why this takes our number 3 spot.
Number 2, Speed Racer.
Yep, I watched the Speed Racer anime as a kid. Or rather, I watched reruns of the show. We had Cartoon Network at one point as well. The Tube Television Network, or Tube Hour on SABC2, would give way to a Cartoon Network segment on, I think it was like Friday afternoons or Friday nights, and it would last, you'd have like an hour or so over the whole course of the whole weekend. And that was in the early 2000s. I was about 8 or 9 years old. And so I watched that as well. The show itself aired originally in 1967. From 1967 to 1968. And followed the title character, Speed, or Speed Racer. He's this sort of teenaged driver who drives his trusty Mark V in all these different events and through all these different mini adventures to become a professional race car driver. Now, as boring as it sounds, 52 episodes of a teenaged race car driver, you might be thinking, oh, but that can't be, that's not entertaining. It's entertaining, trust me. I sat and watched that, and being that I was a little kid at the time, we went and we watched it on TV every day. They would have at least an hour of Speed Racer episodes, and all the stories are more or less the same. He enters a race, something goes wrong, Racer X saves his tail, and the Mark V has these gadgets that are used. Yes, gadgets. The Mark V is, in my opinion, and I think in the opinions of a lot of the fans of the old show as well, the Mark V is the real star of the show, and you only really watched it to see which gadget was going to be used when, as opposed to just watching for the story. In terms of the story itself, the episodes are largely episodic, so you don't need to watch from beginning to end. The dialogue is dated, but considering that it's from the 60s, animation, in terms of the stationary objects and that sort of stuff, it hasn't aged very well. The action sequences and everything else is fine, but in general the show has not aged very well. Yeah, the car itself is still fine. I still love the show. I watch it every once in a while when I get the chance. And that is why it has taken the number 2 spot.
Honorable mentions include Pokemon and Digimon.
Okay, so considering the impact that these two titles have had on the anime world in general, I couldn't do a top 5 list of anime that I grew up with and not include these. I did not watch these two shows very much because at the time they didn't really interest me. I found that the art style on the Pokemon stuff was okay. I watched 2 or 3 episodes of each one on and off, but things just got really complicated really fast. I had no idea what was happening. And then I sort of, the one day, picked up a Pokemon series again, caught it on TV, and they did this whole long marathon, and I saw a formula and went, okay, but they're just doing the same thing over and over and over again. And the same with Digimon. They did the same thing with Digimon as well. Someone's causing trouble, so everybody has to go and put a stop to it. The formula that I recognized with Pokemon in particular, I mean, I recognized Pokemon's formula pretty early on. It's only now, though, that I'm actually able to explain it. They've always got the new Pokemon that they're hunting. Team Rocket comes in and tries to catch them, and it blows up in their faces. So, why these honorable mentions? I don't know. I didn't grow up with them. I grew up with them, but I didn't watch them. I just found the shows to be boring, and I know I'm going to get a lot of hate for that. The very formulaic nature of it kind of just put me off. There was very little that was actually there, and the only reason it was complicated to me originally was because I wasn't clued in on the formula. I wasn't actually paying attention to it and saying, okay, well, you just did this. You've already done this, so why are you doing it again? But these 2 entries, and you could argue that the other entries on this list are also formulaic, because they are. But what the other entries on this list have is what these 2 entries, Digimon and Pokemon, for me, these 2 series just, they don't have the staying power anymore. Apart from Pokemon's one opening theme, Catch Them All or whatever it's called, I can't remember much about it at all. So, yeah, and Digimon, which I consider to be very much a Pokemon clone anyway, I don't remember anything about it at all. I don't remember character names. I don't remember story arc titles. I don't remember theme songs. I don't remember any of that. So, which is very sad considering how much time and effort went into putting that stuff together and getting all that stuff filmed and animated and recorded and so on. Anyways, had to mention them because it's not fair to just leave out 2 anime giants for no apparent reason. Even if I didn't watch them, I still had to acknowledge that they existed. So, on to my number 1 pick.
Kaiketsu, The Legend of Zorro.
Okay, so our number 1 entry. Wow. Wow, it's been a close battle. Kaiketsu Zorro, as it was billed in Japan, is, I think, the least well-known series on this list. I don't think anybody even knows about this series anymore, because every time I talk to someone about anime, if I even mention in passing that there's a Zorro anime, they go nuts. They go absolutely bonkers. And I mean, the series came out in 1996, 1997 roundabouts, and as you can probably guess, it's based very loosely, albeit very loosely, on Johnston McCulley's Zorro character. It lasted a while. I loved the show. I don't know that my mom was very keen on me watching it, to be honest. But the story is pretty simple. Diego de la Vega comes home, he finds the Spanish army causing trouble, he becomes Zorro to put a stop to all the trouble they're causing. And of course, as Zorro he is one way, and as Diego he is a complete idiot. 52 episodes were produced, but only 46 of those aired in Japan, and I think when it came to South Africa, when it hit the television screens in South Africa on video cassettes and whatnot, I think we got very lucky because we got the whole series that came out on video cassette. I actually had, at one point, I think my folks actually got me the whole cassette tape series, the whole series on cassette tape, and unfortunately the tapes were lost in one of our moves, so but yeah, I loved the series. The characters are all likable. I loved watching Diego and Bernard and everybody else sort of messing around. Sergeant Gonzalez getting picked on all the time. That was hysterical. It's just a shame that this series seems to have just vanished. It's such an obscure series now, that you really do have to know where to look if you want to find it. And with that said, though, the way the story balances everything out between action and intrigue and humor, and there's no filler in this. Every episode is one story, literally one story. So at most you'll get 2 episodes for a story arc, and that's it. But generally it's one story per episode, which means that we don't get any filler at all, which is great. So yeah, if you are looking for a good action series, give this one a look at. Take a look at this. Give it a try. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't. That's up to you. I found it to be a thoroughly enjoyable watch. But then again, I suppose I am rather biased about my tastes and what I consider to be good anime. So yeah, anyway, that was my list. And I hope you all enjoyed it. I certainly had fun putting this list together. I should have another episode up in a week or so, and I've also got other segments coming up on other mediums, books, movies, American comics and Japanese comics, and so I've got a lot coming up on the channel here if you're on YouTube. So yeah, if you like this and you want to see more, then do subscribe and leave a like, just that I can see, I just like to see it personally. Also, you can follow me at Anime Crazy Nut. I will on Twitter. I'll put the link in the video, about here maybe. And then I will see you in a couple of weeks. If you have any suggestions or any questions about what genres to avoid, or what would be a good starting point, look at these series. A lot of them are dated, and a lot of them are very difficult to watch because of that datedness. But if you've never watched anime before and you really want to get into it, just out of curiosity, I would say these are your best bets. If you have any other anime-related videos you'd like to see, leave them in the comments, or you can go to my Twitter link, my Twitter profile, and you can leave your suggestions there for me to go through. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again next time.